A mother and her newborn disappear without a trace. No witnesses. No leads. And for nearly 7 years, nothing. Until now. Keir Johnson was a young mother. She was 34 years old, full of life, and completely devoted to her baby girl, Chloe. Chloe was only 8 months old, tiny hands, bright eyes, and a laugh that could light up a room. To the world, they were just another mother and daughter. But to the people who loved them, they were everything. And then one day they were gone. April 30th, 2017. A normal Sunday. Keir tells her family she's taking Chloe to Buckrow Beach in Hampton, Virginia. It was supposed to be a simple day. Sun, sand, and fresh ocean air. Keir loved the beach. It was her place of peace. A spot where she could sit, let the waves roll in, and watch her daughter take in the world. She packs up her car, a black Kia Optima. Straps Chloe into her car seat. Says goodbye to her family. And then, she drives off. No one knew it yet, but that was the last time anyone would ever see them again. Hours pass. Then an entire day. Then another. No calls. No messages. Nothing. Keir's phone goes silent. That wasn't like her. She was always in touch. She was the kind of person who checked in, who made sure everyone knew she was okay. But now, there was just silence. Her family starts calling. Over and over. No answer. They tell themselves maybe her phone died. Maybe she got caught up at the beach. Maybe she stayed with a friend. But deep down, something doesn't feel right. Something feels wrong. By nightfall, panic sets in. They start driving around looking. Calling hospitals. Checking places she might have gone. But there's no sign of Keir. No sign of Chloe. No one has seen them. No one knows where they are. A mother and her baby, gone. The police are called. Reports are filed. But in those first few hours, the case isn't treated as an emergency. After all, adults go missing all the time. Maybe she left on her own. Maybe she just needed space. That's what the authorities tell themselves. But Keir's family knows better. She wouldn't just leave. She had no reason to run. She had no enemies. She had an 8-month-old baby to care for. She wouldn't just disappear. The hours turn into days. And then the first terrifying realization comes crashing down. Keir's car is gone too. A whole vehicle. Vanished. No traffic cameras pick her up. No witnesses come forward. It's like she was erased. And suddenly the question is no longer, where is Keir? It's, what happened to Keir? But no one was prepared for the truth. Because what happened next would change everything. Welcome to True Crime Stories videos. I welcome you, my viewers, and most especially my subscribers, for your support as we keep improving and bringing you daily told and untold true crime stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Keir Johnson was the kind of mother every child deserves. Loving. Protective. Always putting her baby first. She didn't have much, but she had Chloe, and that was enough. She worked hard. She made sacrifices. Every decision she made was for her daughter. She was the type to double-check the car seat, the type to wake up in the middle of the night just to make sure Chloe was breathing. She loved her baby with every part of her soul. And then she was gone. The moment Keir missed that first phone call, her family felt it in their bones. Something was wrong. They told themselves to stay calm, but the unease was growing. She was supposed to be at the beach. But she never arrived. Call after call. Text after text. No answer. By nightfall, fear turned to panic. Keir's mother, Tony Jacobs, knew her daughter wouldn't just disappear. Not with Chloe. Not without telling someone. She knew something was wrong. The next morning, the calls didn't stop. Friends, relatives, even hospitals. No one had seen Keir. No one had seen Chloe. Then came the police. The family reported them missing. Keir and Chloe. A mother and her baby vanished. But the police didn't share the same urgency. They asked the usual questions. Did she have a reason to leave? Was she upset? Could she have just taken a break? The answers were all the same. No. Keir wasn't that kind of person. She wasn't running from anything. She wasn't hiding from anyone. She had no reason to leave her life behind. And yet, she was gone. Then came the first 48 hours, the most important hours in any missing persons case. That's when the family started searching on their own. They drove the roads. They checked the beach. They knocked on doors. They begged for someone to remember seeing her. But no one did. Not a single person had seen Keir's car pull into the parking lot. Not a single camera caught her driving through town. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Then an even more chilling thought settled in. What if Keir never even made it to the beach? What if she never got that far? And if she didn't, then where did she go? And who took her there? Keir Johnson and her baby girl Chloe had been missing for days. Days of silence. Days of waiting by the phone hoping for a call that never came. Days of staring out the window, wondering if Keir would walk through the door like nothing had happened. But she never did. Her family was running out of ways to convince themselves this was all just a misunderstanding. Something was wrong. They could feel it. Keir didn't just vanish. She was taken. The police opened an investigation, but the truth was, they had nothing to go on. No footage of her leaving home. No sign of her at the beach. No witnesses coming forward. How does a woman and her baby disappear in the middle of the day, and no one sees anything? It didn't make sense. At first, the police treated it like a missing persons case. Maybe she left on her own. Maybe she needed space. But Keir's family knew better. She didn't just leave. She wouldn't just disappear. Keir was responsible. She had plans, routines. She wasn't the kind of person to abandon everything without a word. And Chloe. She would never leave Chloe behind. Keir lived for her baby. She was her world. So if Keir was gone, it meant someone took her. And if someone took her, it meant she was in danger. Keir's mother, Toni Jacobs, couldn't wait for answers. She knew time was running out. The first 48 hours were critical in a missing persons case. After that, the chances of finding someone alive dropped. She refused to sit back. Toni printed flyers with Keir and Chloe's faces and plastered them everywhere. Gas stations, grocery stores, street corners. She knocked on doors. She talked to neighbors. She asked anyone who would listen. Have you seen my daughter? Have you seen her baby? Most people shook their heads. Some looked uncomfortable, avoiding her eyes. Others hesitated as if they wanted to say something, but didn't. Still no one came forward. Keir and Chloe had simply vanished. Then came the press conferences. Standing in front of news cameras, Toni held up a photo of her daughter, her voice breaking. Please, if you know something, say something. My daughter would never leave on her own. My granddaughter is only 8 months old. She needs her mother. Please, help us bring them home. The desperation in her voice was raw. The pain in her eyes was unbearable. The news stations covered the story. The headlines flashed across the screen. Mother and baby missing without a trace. Virginia woman and infant disappear. Family begs for help. The story spread. People started paying attention. But attention wasn't enough. They needed answers. Then, finally, a breakthrough. Keir's car was found. A black Kia Optima just sitting there. It wasn't at the beach. It wasn't near her home. It was somewhere else. Somewhere it wasn't supposed to be. The police rushed to the scene. Keir's family held their breath, waiting for news. Was she inside? Was Chloe inside? Was this it? When officers opened the car, their worst fears came true. Keir wasn't there. Chloe wasn't there. The car was empty. But the chilling part? There were no signs of struggle. No shattered windows, no blood, no ripped fabric. Nothing to say that something violent had happened. It was as if the car had just been parked there, and abandoned. But by who? If Keir had been the one to park it, then where did she go? And if she wasn't the one to leave it there, who was? The discovery of the car changed everything. If Keir had left on her own, she wouldn't have ditched her car like this. Not without calling someone. Not without taking Chloe's car seat, her diaper bag, her things. None of it made sense. And that's when the theories started. Some people whispered about human trafficking. A mother and baby, an easy target. Others believed she had been kidnapped, forced off the road, taken against her will. Then there was the darkest possibility. What if Keir knew the person who took her? What if this wasn't random? What if the answer wasn't out in the streets, but closer than anyone thought? For weeks, Keir and Chloe were missing. No answers. No suspects. No good leads. A mother and her baby just gone. The search had turned into something much worse. This wasn't just a case of a missing woman. This was starting to feel like something far more sinister. And then one name started coming up. A name the police had known from the very beginning. A name that should have been questioned harder. A name Keir's family couldn't ignore. Carlos A. Johnson Jr., Chloe's father. Keir's family knew all about Carlos. He wasn't just some stranger. He wasn't an outsider. He was part of Keir's life. At least he used to be. Carlos was Chloe's father. But that didn't mean he was around. He wasn't a husband. He wasn't a boyfriend. And from what Keir's family said, he wasn't much of a father either. He and Keir had a history. And not the good kind. It was complicated. It was messy. And if you ask the people closest to Keir, they'd tell you one thing. She was afraid of him. Keir and Carlos weren't together when she disappeared. They had been on and off, but by the time Chloe was born, things weren't looking good. Keir's family knew there was tension. They knew Carlos could be controlling. They knew Keir wasn't happy. And maybe, just maybe, she was trying to get away from him. But Carlos? He wasn't the kind of man to just let things go. When Keir and Chloe vanished, Carlos' name was brought up immediately. It was the obvious question. Where was the baby's father? When was the last time he saw Keir? What did he know? But Carlos? He didn't have much to say. He told police he had nothing to do with it. That he had no idea where Keir was. That he was just as shocked as everyone else. And at first the police seemed to believe him. There was no physical evidence. No proof he had been with Keir that day. No signs of a fight, no witness pointing the finger at him. So Carlos was allowed to walk free. And the case? It went cold. But Keir's family didn't buy it. They had always suspected Carlos. They knew how he treated Keir. They knew he could be manipulative. They knew he had a way of making things go his way. And they had a gut feeling, one they couldn't shake. Carlos knew more than he was saying. But without proof, what could they do? All they could do was keep searching. Keep pushing. Keep fighting to find Keir and Chloe. Because one thing was becoming painfully clear. Keir didn't just vanish. Someone made her disappear. And that someone might have been closer than anyone realized. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And then months became years. Years without Keir. Years without Chloe. Years of waking up every morning and feeling that same crushing pain, the weight of the unknown, the agonizing silence. Where were they? What happened? Why did no one have answers? Keir's family wasn't willing to move on. They couldn't. Not without knowing the truth. Not without knowing if Keir and her baby were somewhere out there, waiting to be found. But the world? The world moved on. At first, the search was everywhere. Keir's face was on the news. Her mother was in front of cameras, begging for help. Social media spread their story. People were watching. People were listening. But as time passed, the headlines faded. Other stories took over. New tragedies. New missing people. And just like that, Keir and Chloe were forgotten. Their case grew cold. And that's when the real nightmare began. For the world, this case had become just another mystery. But for Keir's mother, Toni Jacobs, this wasn't just a case. This was her daughter. This was her granddaughter. And she refused to let them be erased. Toni fought every single day. She printed new flyers long after the police stopped looking. She held vigils when the news station stopped caring. She searched online, digging through posts, chasing leads, hoping for anything, any tiny piece of hope. Because she believed, deep in her heart, that Keir and Chloe were out there somewhere. And she was going to bring them home. People on the internet became obsessed. Theories spread like wildfire. Some said Keir had run away, that maybe she didn't want to be found. Others were convinced she had been taken and trafficked. Her and Chloe both, lost in some dark, hidden world. And then came the so-called sightings. Strangers swore they had seen Keir. They claimed they saw a woman who looked just like her, walking alone in a different city. They swore they saw a little girl, a child with Chloe's eyes, standing by someone who wasn't her mother. Every single time, Toni held her breath. Every single time she picked up the phone, waiting for confirmation. And every single time, it wasn't them. False leads. Dead ends. And with every disappointment, the fear grew deeper. What if Keir and Chloe weren't just missing? What if they were gone? The truth is, cases like Keir and Chloe's happen all the time. A woman disappears. A child disappears. And the world forgets. Because they weren't famous. Because they weren't rich. Because there were no security cameras catching the moment they vanished. Because there were no witnesses willing to speak up. And in the end, without new clues, without a body, without a suspect, the world stops looking. But Keir's mother? She didn't stop. She wouldn't stop. Because deep inside she still believed. One day she would know the truth. One day the silence would end. One day, someone would finally talk. For 7 years, the case of Keir Johnson and her baby, Chloe, was nothing but silence. No arrests. No confessions. No bodies. Just pain, questions, and dead ends. But then, something happened. Something no one saw coming. In February 2025, the police made an announcement. An announcement that sent shockwaves through Keir's family. Through the town of Hampton. Through everyone who had been following this case since the day Keir and Chloe vanished. An arrest. A name that had been whispered since the very beginning. A name that Keir's family had never stopped saying. Carlos A. Johnson Jr. Carlos Johnson. The missing father. The man who said he had nothing to do with Keir's disappearance. The man who walked free while Keir's mother searched the streets, begging for answers. He was finally in handcuffs, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Keir and Chloe were still nowhere to be found. But after years of silence, the police were saying it out loud. They weren't missing. They were dead. For years, investigators said there wasn't enough evidence. No proof of a crime. No body. No security footage showing what happened. But something had changed. Something new had surfaced. Maybe it was a witness. Maybe it was forensic evidence. Something overlooked, something tested with new technology. Maybe someone who had stayed silent for years finally spoke up. We don't know exactly what led to Carlos' arrest. But we know this: the police finally had enough to take him down. And they weren't just accusing him of one murder. They were saying he killed them both. Keir and her baby. For 7 years, Toni Jacobs held on to hope. She had told herself that maybe, just maybe, Keir was out there. That maybe Chloe was somewhere safe. That someday they would come home. But now she was being told the thing she had feared most. That her daughter was never coming back. That her granddaughter was never coming back. That all those sleepless nights, all those desperate searches, all those false leads, it had all been for 2 lives that were already gone. But there was still one thing missing. One thing no one could ignore. Carlos was in jail. Charged with murder. But Keir and Chloe? Still gone. The police had no bodies. No remains. No grave. Carlos wasn't talking. And without bodies, there were still so many unanswered questions. How did they die? Where were they taken? And the biggest question of all, could Keir and Chloe still be alive? Carlos Johnson sits in a jail cell, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. For the deaths of Keir Johnson. For the death of her 8-month-old baby, Chloe. But there's one problem. A huge problem. Where are they? Where are Keir and Chloe? Their bodies have never been found. And without them, there is no grave to visit. No way to say goodbye. No real closure. Only more pain. More questions. And the terrifying possibility that this story isn't over. Because what if Carlos wasn't the only one involved? What if someone else knows the truth? What if someone is still out there, still keeping secrets? The police say Keir and Chloe are gone. That Carlos killed them. That he got away with it for 7 long years. But they haven't told us everything. What do they know that we don't? Did Carlos confess? Or did they finally find evidence, something buried, something hidden, that points to how Keir and Chloe were killed? And if they do know, why aren't they telling us? The public still doesn't have the full story. Keir's family still doesn't have the full story. Because the bodies? They're still missing. And without them, there is no proof of what really happened that day. Carlos was finally arrested. But that raises another terrifying thought. If the police waited 7 years to charge him, what else have they been waiting on? What else do they suspect but can't prove? Could there have been an accomplice? Someone who helped cover up the crime? Someone who knows where the bodies are? Someone who is still out there, still walking free, still holding on to secrets that could finally end this nightmare? Or was this crime even worse than we thought? Could Keir and Chloe have been taken somewhere else? Far away, out of state, hidden so well that they might never be found? And if that's the case, will the truth ever really come out? Keir's mother has spent 7 years begging for answers. She never stopped looking. She never gave up. And now, with Carlos finally arrested, you'd think she would have the truth she's waited so long for. But she doesn't. Because knowing who isn't the same as knowing why. Or knowing how. Or knowing where. Toni Jacobs still wakes up every morning without her daughter. She still goes to bed every night without her granddaughter. She still doesn't know what happened. And until she does, this fight isn't over. The police have put out an offer. A $35,000 reward for information leading to Keir and Chloe. $35,000 for someone to finally speak up. To tell them where to look. To tell them where to dig. To tell them the one thing they still don't know. Where are Keir and Chloe? Where are they right now? And the biggest question of all, will they ever be found? A mother and her baby should never vanish without a trace. But for 7 years, that's exactly what happened. Keir Johnson. Chloe Johnson. A young mother. Her innocent baby girl. They left home one morning, and never came back. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just gone. For years the case sat in silence. A mystery with no answers. A family with no closure. A name whispered in the dark. Carlos Johnson. And now he's sitting in jail. Charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. But the truth? The truth is still out there. Because their bodies? Still missing. The full story? still untold. Carlos is in custody. But what about the missing details? What about the holes in the timeline? What about the people who might know more, but won't speak up? Keir and Chloe's final moments. We still don't know where they were taken. We still don't know what happened that day. And worst of all, we still don't know where they are. Were they buried? Were they hidden? Was there someone else involved? Someone still walking free? Every crime has a truth. But in this case, the truth is still buried in darkness. And until it comes out, this case is not over. For 7 years, Tony Jacobs has fought for her daughter. She has begged for answers. She has searched every street. She has knocked on every door. She has stood in front of cameras, holding her daughter's picture, pleading, "Where is my baby?" And she won't stop. Not until she knows. Not until Keir and Chloe are found. Not until justice is fully served. This isn't just a crime story. This is real. A mother and her baby disappeared. A family was destroyed. And the truth is still out there. Someone knows something. Someone has seen something. And that means there's still a chance. A chance to bring Keir and Chloe home. A chance to finally tell their story, the real story. A chance to close this case for good. If you know anything at all, now is the time to speak up. Because this case is not closed. Not yet. Keir and Chloe vanished in 2017. 7 years later, we are still asking the same question. Still waiting for the same answer. Still searching. So now we ask you, Keir and Chloe are out there. Will they ever be found? Or will this case remain a haunting mystery, forever?